What up, perps? Kid Kobe is back in effect. Purple State Party, you know what we're doing here? We're repping America, the center, and good old-fashioned common sense. That's kind of starting to return a little bit. People finally calling people out, and the truth is starting to come out. And, some of these lies, this being the week of L, some of these lies are no longer being able to hide in the shadows. And I think it's a good thing. I mean, yes, there are the negatives that might be going on right now. Maybe some people feel a little more threatened than other people. And that kind of sucks. But sometimes, it's like they say, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. So let's break some eggs and get this thing going. So I couldn't do an episode with the letter L without bringing up the Lord. And I always say the Lord works in mysterious ways. I'm not the originator of that. Obviously, other people said that. But, I had a long week. I had kind of a long Friday. A little bit frustrating. A lot of driving this week and everything. So last night we had a concert out at the Bellwether. I really recommend that theater. We were seeing OK Go. If you look up OK Go in YouTube, you will see some of the most creative videos you've ever seen. They make videos where a car is making the music. They do optical illusions. They rose to fame dancing on treadmills. And they did a Rube Goldberg device video. Really good. My daughter listened to them back in her real dark days. And, they hadn't really done much since 2014. So she kind of thought she would never see them in their prime or anything like that. But they came back around. They got a new album out. Pretty good. And so we got concert tickets. We went. And, along the way, LA traffic being what it was, we were starting to, we left and we had like 15 minutes to spare. And pretty soon we're down to like a couple minutes to spare and stuff. And I was kind of getting frustrated by all of it. But we finally get there. The parking is really, really close. The Bellwether, it's just literally right up the street. You can't go any further. The street's blocked off. Parked there. Guy takes a little while getting us parked, whatever. I'm starting to be like, man, we're going to be way at the back of the line and everything. We cross the street, and we think we see the lead singer of OK Go just kind of chilling by one of the back doors with some security guards. And guy says, hey, nice shirt to my daughter. We're wearing I Made the OK Go videos. If you donated to the cause through a Kickstarter, I think it was a Kickstarter campaign, you got your name at the end of the credits. So I managed to get her name in the credits of the video. We got a T-shirt, all that, right? So it is the lead singer of OK Go. And he's like, nice shirt to my daughter. And she walks up, has a quick convo, doesn't take pictures. She tries to live in the moment and, not try to attract attention to herself, which is wild the way she dresses. Same thing with me, but that's a different story. Gets a high five from the guy, and we head off inside the arena. The opening act absolutely blew, and it was really looking bad. But then all of a sudden, OK Go comes out. There's confetti being shot out of cannons and everything, like nonstop confetti. I mean, it was like a confetti evening, right? I got my sequin scarf on. I'm rocking it out. I think his name's Damien, the lead singer, comes out into the crowd and does a song. And on his way back, he walks right by us, or kind of jogs right by us. And then all of a sudden, my daughter is getting the set list from the confetti guy. And this just shows how sometimes you might think life is throwing you some curveballs, but those curveballs ended up being home runs. And sometimes, when you look for the little rewards in life, you find them. You work hard. You maintain the grind. And then your daughter gets a high five from one of her heroes. Somebody who really, my daughter was a top percentage listener on Spotify. She loves this band. And she gets a high five in a moment with this guy. Like, just a pure moment. Not like fanboying out, fangirling out, taking photos and all that. Just like, hey, what's up? Yeah, looking forward to it, blah, 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 blah. High five. Let's get on with the show. And it's the magical moments like that make me realize that maybe there is this higher power up there. It just reminds me that maybe Even if you want to call it karma, maybe it's true. You do good things, you work hard, and good things come to you. And I'll tell you, as a father, nothing better can come to me than something good coming to my daughter. It was just an awesome night. I really recommend highly to everybody that you take your kids, listen to their music, It doesn't have to be. OK Go comes from my generation, well, the tail end of my generation. And, but it was my daughter who discovered it. But, man, those moments, getting to meet that guy like that, that's something we're going to have for the rest of our lives. And, if that was God's hand, then thank you, man. Let's get on with this. We unfortunately have to cover another L. Lies. Starts with an L, doesn't it? I'm really astute, aren't I? I can figure things out. Do the thing about it is, when it comes to, we're, basically talking about politics, but I like to extend my politics into, everyday life, so, whatever. But, the truth loses votes. That's sad, but it does. We saw that with Bush Sr. when he had to raise taxes, and he got voted out. The truth, it hurts sometimes. Sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it just sucks. And we're in a period of time right now where all politics aside, okay, forget any sort of team alliance. Let's just call this what it is. Let's just be a baseball game announcer and call what we just saw on the field. We had 4 years of lies that really put us in what I believe is a really bad place, okay? It wasn't all Biden. It wasn't all Democrats. It was the COVID. It was other world actors, But right now we have to get to some form of truth. And to me, not all exaggerations are lies. So that's just before, I would love some comments or whatever, on this. But before you think about that, I understand that there are exaggerations that are lies. But we're talking about lies. One of the most costly lies that I live with, the costly government boondoggle that I live with, is the high-speed San Francisco to LA train. This thing is an absolute lie. They lied to get it on the ballot. They lied to get it approved. And now they're lying to keep it alive. Meanwhile, our state, California, just had to borrow $2 billion from the federal government. We already owe them a shit ton. But we borrowed $2 billion to prop up our Medi-Cal because Gavin Newsom was giving out insurance to every Tom, Dick, and Harry who crossed the border. See? And so the money that we're wasting on the high-speed rail is definitely money that we could use other places. And, I just want to preface this also by saying, for God's sakes, people, one thing that's really all Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians, all those people, the one thing we should be holding these people accountable for is accounting. But anyhow, sometimes, you hear people like myself, and we were quoting like Jake Tapper, we were quoting Fox News or Joe Rogan or somebody like this. This is coming from the California High-Speed Rail Authority, the literal authority on the high-speed rail. So let's look at it. When we Californians voted this thing in, which I never voted for, no way, but anyhow, it was supposed to run from Los Angeles, which you could assume meaning somewhere near the city center, to San Francisco, again, somewhere in the city center, maybe the train station, something like that, right? It was going to be done sometime around 2020, and it was only going to cost $33 billion. Now the High-Speed Rail Authority is coming out. These are the people who are in charge of the frickin' project, are saying that it's going to be at least $135 billion. Of course, that number could go up, right? And it's not really going to be Los Angeles to San Francisco. It's going to be Palmdale to Gilroy. And yes, I can hear you out there saying, where the fuck are these places? All right. Well, Palmdale's way out in the high desert. It's on for most people in LA, we look at, I believe it's called the San Gabriel Mountains. Well, on the flip side of the San Gabriel Mountains, and if you drive about 45 minutes north, you find Palmdale. Okay. Palmdale is technically in LA County, but it's 37 miles from the rim of LA City. All right. Gilroy is on the other side of the bay from San Francisco. It's about 70 miles away. Gilroy's a small farming town. They have a garlic festival there every year. So I kind of know Gilroy. I've been there, right? But you're going to need a car. You're going to need to get to this train station. I mean, Palmdale is not Los Angeles, all right? I had to actually look it up. It is so far away. I had to look it up to see if it was actually in LA County. And it literally is like on the edge of LA County. It is the edge of LA County. So you're going to need a car to get to these train stations. And once these trains drop you off, you're going to need a car to get to San Francisco, or you're going to have to take a bus or an Uber or something like that. And it roughly estimates out to a little more than 7 hours to get from, say, what I did was from, roughly my house to Palmdale, the train, Gilroy, drive to San Francisco, right? About 7 hours. I ran the same numbers for a car just leaving my house, and it was 3 minutes faster. 3 minutes faster. And don't tell me, but the train's going to save the environment, because we already know that's a crock of shit. Okay, the environment is going to do, the climate is going to do whatever the hell it wants. The other day here, it spiked up in almost nearly 100 degrees. Why? What was that? Was that a weird rotation? Was it, were we getting pulled closer to the sun by Mars? I mean, what was that? Because I'll tell you, it wasn't anything that puny little man was doing. Okay? Puny little man was not creating 2 days of 100-degree weather. And now I'm bundled up again, because we are at the mercy of the spinning planet. But enough of that. All right? And when is this train going to be done? When? Maybe somewhere around 2045. Oh, that's awesome. So the people who supported the train, who voted for the train, are probably going to be too old or even dead to use the train. And by then, it's going to be cheaper just to fly. It's going to be easier to just drive, break it up into small little chunks. Nobody's going to use this thing. This is just something for Gavin Newsom to hang his hat on. This is something for California Democrats to say, look at us, we have a high-speed rail, blah, 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 blah. But it's not LA to San Francisco. And it might work for the rest of the country to believe that. But guess what, folks? LA County is the biggest county in the United States. When you realize how far Palmdale is from where actual people in LA live, the numbers just dwindle. I mean, there's not much out by Palmdale. North of Palmdale is Lancaster. And from, Gilroy, from Palmdale to anything in Los Angeles, you get to like Valencia, Santa Clarita, that kind of area. You start getting close to the San Fernando Valley. But you're not talking about LA proper. It's just a lie. And instead of just admitting the lie and backing out of it, they continue on. They double down. It's a waste of money, and it needs to end now. Boy, Trump has been having a good week, hasn't he? He's had a lot break his way. One thing we were talking about, me and my daughter, and the rest of the family, but my daughter likes to spur these conversations on. We were talking about how Donald Trump told pharmaceutical companies to lower their prices. And my daughter was arguing, well, that's going to take away money for research. Well, we overpay. The rest of the world gets it on the cheap. So first of all, that's not a good deal. They could maybe they could raise their prices a little bit in Europe and some other countries and to fund this research, right? And of course, it being voluntarily, she doesn't believe it's going to happen. But it's not a matter of the pharmaceutical companies voluntarily lowering their prices. What it really is this is Trump's negotiations, okay? He wrote The Art of the Deal. He loves the deal. He loves to deal. He loves to wheel and deal, right? We know that about the guy. So the the pharmaceutical companies say, hey, we will lower our price by 20%, but we want 2 more years on the patent. See, the thing in pharmaceuticals that not everybody understands is that when they discover a molecule and patent it, the clock starts running. They've got about 20 years before generics can come in. Now, 20 years seems like a long time, except they have to figure out how to manufacture this new drug. What is it going to come in? Capsules, hard pills? What are they going to do? What are you going to mix it with? If you mix it with this, does it negate it? Blah, 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 blah. They've got to do all that. They've got to do all the testing, all of the researching. They've got to spend billions of dollars to develop these drugs and hope that the government then approves it. By the time that's all done, they're lucky if they have half that time to maintain exclusivity. We already see, for example, Viagra. There's already generic Viagra out there. So now they're no longer making the money they once were making. So they say, hey, we'll go down 20% if you give us 2 more years on the patent. Trump comes back. We'll give you you give us 35% cost reduction, spread the cost across Europe, and we'll give you 5 extra years of exclusivity. Boom. Deal done. Count it. That's the way this guy is operating. He's not concerned with garnering votes. He's not concerned with whether or not you like him or not. He's got work to do, and he's going about it. I want to bounce back to the lies. Those were I'll tell you, the high speed and the pharmaceuticals are 2 things that I think really kind of go hand in hand. Where you see what the California Democrats are doing, trying to keep a boondoggle alive. And you see what Trump's doing, trying to negotiate fair deals, equitable deals. A great deal, they always say, a great deal is where each side is a little bit unhappy, but mostly happy. That's a good deal. That's a fair deal. Anyhow, back to the L's and the lies. This is from Babylon Bee. Jake Tapper uncovers startling evidence that Biden's decline was covered up by Jake Tapper. Yeah. And then Bronco chimes in. Then Biden's decline is a right-wing conspiracy. Now, White House and the media covered up Biden's decline. Yeah, Jake Tapper's out there spilling the beans. George Clooney's talking about how Biden was frail and had to be carried around and didn't even recognize the great George Clooney. These people were lying this entire time. Now, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here. Had they removed Biden and stuck in Kamala Harris, I would have been very scared, all right? I would have been very scared. But at the very least, they were telling the truth. But they didn't. They lied and they lied and they lied about what we could all see. He was not some vigorous man who was running circles around his young pages. He was bullshit, dude. This guy was a guy who was barely keeping it together. And, the truth of the matter is much like, steroids in professional sports, he was being pumped full of stuff to keep him going. Yeah, you can give people drugs that turn an old, frail, demented guy into somewhat of a functioning robot. And that's what they did. And that's something that I hope people remember. All right? Neither side is perfect. I'm not here to defend either side, red or blue, Republican or Democrat. But come on. Tell us the fucking truth here. That's especially CNN. And that's why we're in the mess we're in right now. Because we can't get any information that we can trust because people are too one-sided. The best you're going to get really out of the major ones is Fox. I'm just telling you, and that's what survey after survey has said. Here's another one. And this is coming from, at the beginning of the show, I said, kind of like the curtains are being pulled back here. This is 60 Minutes. I wouldn't say 60 Minutes is necessarily far left, but I also wouldn't say I've been paying too much attention to 60 Minutes. $1 trillion of pandemic relief was lost to fraud, and nearly every American's personal data is for sale. They were just buying it up. This is a stunning report from 60 Minutes. On some of the more shocking claims of egregious fraud and abuse in federal spending, that Trump and Doge found out. $1 trillion went bye-bye. Here's a fraud expert, Linda Miller, who worked for the U.S. Government Accountability Office. They began buying stolen identities so that they could begin applying for disaster loans, disaster grants, and on behalf of stolen identities. She was glad to see that tech billionaire Elon Musk was making an issue of fraud, such a public issue. She's quoted here as saying, "To be honest, Elon Musk coming out and saying there is a huge amount of fraud, I welcome that message completely because finally somebody is actually saying this." She lies by omission. $1 trillion went bye-bye on fraud because the people in charge are not treating that money with any sort of reverence. They don't give a shit. They just don't care. It's not their money. It's the taxpayer's money. And F the taxpayer. You know, these programs a lot of them were propped up by Biden. You know, so all they wanted to do, the media and the government, all they wanted to do was put rosy spins on all of this stuff. $1 trillion. $1 freaking trillion. With all of the issues and all of the people struggling out there grinding every single day to barely get by and to afford the medicines and things that they need to have in their lives. And our government allows $1 trillion to just walk out the door. Our government in California is going to sink $100 billion into a train that, looking back on it now, I don't think anybody really wanted. That's just crap. I'll blaze through this. Sometimes I have to self-edit because I ramble. You ever notice that I ramble? Trump signed strategic economic partnership with Saudi Arabia. It's looking around the dollar value of about $600 billion, and it could, you know, it's in quotes. This was written by Fox Business, so I'm surprised they put quotes in there, and could help create up to 2 million U.S. jobs. Again, Trump is out there trying his best to make our country great again. Not that it ever stopped being great, because in my opinion, America never stopped being great. States, people, moments in time, maybe not. But anyhow, you know, he's, you know, investing in cutting edge technology, you know, stuff like Google, Oracle, Salesforce, AMD, Uber. You know, they're going to start moving in over there. There's a lot of money to be made. You know, here's another one. This one, I love this one because it comes from CNN, reposted here on MSN. It's great how Trump managed to get his much needed China trade victory. They have to slant it a little bit. They basically slashed some of the reciprocal trade tariffs, de-escalation in the trade war. That's good for everybody. But it sort of shows you, you know, like they said right here, nervous about the prospect of empty store shelves and reignited inflation, Trump sent in his even-keeled and professional negotiators to Geneva to snag a win. Yeah, of course he was. He was nervous about hurting Americans. They want to make it out like it's all about politics. But what's Trump got to do politically? He's done. He's not getting a third term, right? You know, one of the economic council directors here told CNN, we have a fresh start with China. That's the way to think about these negotiations. He's trying to get us on an even footing with the rest of the country, you know? And that is one of the things that has to be done because we are getting the shaft in a lot of these deals. And we shouldn't be, okay? We simply shouldn't be. You know, there's a lot of people out there who hate America. I love America. I think America has done a lot for the world. Of course, yeah, I mean, like they say, you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. America is not perfect. America tries to be. That's the big difference. Anyhow, here's another L, a liar. Look at this guy, Gavin Newsom. I'm telling you to look at something on a podcast. I'm brilliant, aren't I? Eyeing 2028 presidential bid, Gavin Newsom distances himself from Gavin Newsom. Yeah, he is. He is a slimy guy who hopefully will not be elected. I do not think America will embrace this guy. You know, and I want to look at one of the recent things that's come up. You know, he talks about ending all encampments in California, homeless encampments. And he brags about those being cleared from Caltrans-controlled areas, like the side of highways and stuff. Yeah, they push them into the city where they become more of a problem. He turns around and he blames the city. He goes after towns like Turlock and Norwalk. You know, raise your hand if you know where they are. But he especially goes after Huntington Beach. And he always talks about Huntington Beach being like the model for how to create homeless people because their properties are expensive and they don't do this and they don't do that, right? But in actuality, he just wants Huntington Beach to be a shithole like Venice Beach. Overrun, you know? But what's interesting, as he goes around and he blames the homeless problem on all of these cities, right? He never talks about one city that passed a resolution to defy his orders. Does he go after them? No. They have power. They have too much power. He needs their votes. And that city is, of course, Los Angeles. Doing nothing. Doing nothing. We make some little efforts here. But right now, LA homelessness, the homeless shelters and agencies and all that shit are under investigation for rampant fraud. Rampant just crap. Like I think it was last week where we were talking about one of the heads who fired all the competent people and brought in her underqualified friends and tried to run up a giant open bar tab on the city's dime and can't account for money and gets paid something like, what was it, 10 grand a week? And can't even account for the money. You know, Gavin even refused to sign a bill to account for the homeless dollars. He's a two-faced pig bastard. He has no morals, no values, or original ideas that don't suck. He runs around California like he's our king, and he and his party alone, no Republicans stand at fault for this, are pricing us out of our birthright. I was born here. I deserve to die here. But they want it for the elite and the people who clean their toilets, which is why they incentivize illegal immigrants. That's why they let them enroll in school. That's why they give them health insurance. That's why they put them on subsidy programs and all the blah, blah, blah. And the same thing with the homeless. They want the homeless to come over here, cause chaos, and make us move away because we just can't live with this shit anymore. It's too expensive and it's too fucking chaotic. Yeah, that's his plan. No matter what he says in 2028, that's his plan. Find the nice areas, fuck them up, drive everybody out, then clean them up for the elites. That's what California is going to be. We're going to be an exclusive hotel for billionaires. Another thing he's backing down on, universal health care. But is he? Well, he wants to start charging a premium in 2027. Now notice, see, in 2027, in 2028, he could say, oh, look, I've done something. I'm making illegal immigrants pay a little bit for their health care insurance. And part of the problem is that when you give illegal immigrants insurance, you now add to the number of people who are just using them for, the weight loss, or they're buying the pain pills. They go into different doctors and get prescriptions for Oxycontin and all the other shit that you can resell on the streets. Now, again, I'm not saying all of them, but it only takes a small percentage. I mean, we lost $1 trillion in COVID fraud. Was that every American committing, their share of the fraud? No, it was a handful of people. Look up crime statistics in New York City where, a small percentage of people are responsible for a majority of the crime. It doesn't take a lot. It's a bad idea. And now he's having to back down on it. Here's the exact number. Yeah, we had to borrow $3.4 billion to pay health insurers, doctors, and hospitals caring for patients enrolled in the California's Medicaid program. You know where you could get $3.4 billion? Stop giving into the fucking train. Look how this all ties together. I feel like a mad genius today. Complicating his political tightrope, polling shows that providing health care coverage for immigrants without legal status has tepid support, and any resulting budget trouble could harm his political legacy should he run for president. Right? Where's this one? Here we go. This guy, Mike Madrid, an anti-Trump Republican, he can blame Trump. There's only so much money to go around. It's making people look at health care, because Trump's making cuts. It's making people look at the health care that they can't afford and ask, why the hell are we giving it away for free to people who aren't here illegally? Yeah, he's backed himself into a political corner. And he can, here's another one. Gravy train is over. Trump's Department of Homeland Security probing California for handing federal freebies to illegal migrants. See, he's a lying sack of shit who cares more about manipulating a situation to make himself look good. Right now, under the Biden administration, 2 million illegal aliens unlawfully receive Social Security numbers. Those numbers are going to be cut because it's just ridiculous. All right, Blaze Cities really quick. Apparently, there's Chinese spies in our U.S. universities. Yeah, that's a wild one. They send the kids here to go to school, and then they blackmail them into revealing secrets. All right, we're in the home stretch here. The last L I want to cover is love. I disagree with the mask wearing. People holding the no ICE signs, supporting Bernie Sanders as a defender of the poor, the climate change disaster, and George Floyd and all that crap. All these hippies, but I also see them as non-denominational. I don't see them as just members of the other side. They're humans. Look at when we talk about love, look at the Bible thumping like Westboro Baptist Church. They justify their hate, their racism, their leftism, whatever it is. They justify it with the Bible or because this person wrote about it or this professor said it. They have their justifications, but in my book, nothing justifies actual hate. They say, hate the sin, not the sinner. And that's a good way of looking at some of this stuff. I don't like the people who were harassing Jewish students, right? But I don't want to see them die. I don't want to really go up and punch them in the face. I just wish they would shut the hell up. I wish they'd get a little, you can make your point without hurting people. Hate the sin, not the sinner. Well, hate the vote, but not the voter. It's like hate the team, but not the fan. And I know that's not easy. I know that's not easy to just let and live, live and let live. It's not. It's not easy. But nothing worth anything is easy. We all know that, right? Anyhow, I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party. And so are you. Keep grinding. Love one another. Use your head. And just like I did last night, dance it out.